Last topic, guys. Something lighthearted, something that is unifying. Nobody ever gets into any conversations or any drama about this. And that, of course, is the lighthearted conversation regarding Israel versus Hamas. You know, the unifying conversation out there in the world. And I wanted to let Dave and the panel discuss this because you just came back from Israel. You saw what was going on there. And the discussions are now being had, Candace Owens, she's been in what we talked about this on PBD podcast. Check that out. She's kind of getting thrown into the mix. Tucker Carlson is going after Ben Shapiro. You have rabbis going after hosts. There's different conversations going on. At the end of the day, it's pretty easy to me. A democracy defending itself versus a literal terrorist organization. It's pretty clear to me. But now you have people like Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, basically saying, Netanyahu, we got to get him out of there. We can't condone this. There's just so much, I guess, moral equivalence to what's happening right now. So as someone who just came back from Israel, how would you basically describe what's going on in the reality on the ground?
Yeah. Well, I'd much rather talk about that than talk about the fight between, say, Candace and a rabbi. Look, there are 40 some odd Muslim Arab countries out there with no plurality, no Christians left in their nation, no Jews left in their nations, no minorities, virtually no minority rights, no democratic rule, et cetera, et cetera. There's one tiny place the size of New Jersey in the Middle East where Christians live and Jews live and Druze live and other minorities live and Baha'i and atheists and all of that. And it's a democracy. It's an imperfect democracy, like all democracies are imperfect, all societies are imperfect. But it shares American values and rooted in individualism and Judeo-Christian values and all of those things. And they're fighting an organization that is quite literally genocidal in their intent and their actions, and they have every right to defend themselves. It's not even that you have a right. You have a duty to defend yourself. If 2,000 of your own people were killed and then several hundred are hostage, and we're talking about literally from as young as 1 year old, one of the hostages who's most likely dead now, to grandparents, some who survived the Holocaust, to only be dragged into Hamas tunnels, you have a duty as a society to save them. And I was there, and I saw the 47-minute video that they have not released fully to the public. But if you want to see a video of people literally getting beheaded with kitchen knives, I mean, I saw it, getting beheaded, and then Hamas soldiers walking away with smiles on their face.
Some of this was from a body cam, I assume.
This one, no, some of them were from their phones.
Wow. And Hamas's phones, is my point.
And
yes.
Some of them,
That's what I meant.
They took the Israelis' phones so that they could live stream it on Facebook so their families would see it. But literally watching people slice people's heads off and calmly walk away, frothing at the mouth, smiling, laughing. One Hamas guy calling his mother, Mom, I just killed 10 Jews with my own bare hands. I have their blood on their hands. And the mother screaming, God is great.
Allah Akbar.
And by the way, they never screamed Free Palestine in the video. They screamed Allahu Akbar, right? God is great. They never screamed kill the Israelis. They screamed kill the Jews. So they will gladly kill Chuck Schumer. They will gladly kill Bernie Sanders and anyone else. So I would say Israel has a right, a duty, and everything else. Also, just a couple quick stats. There never was a country known as Palestine. It's never existed. Who was the prime minister? What was the money? When people talk about Palestine, they're talking about the British Mandate of Palestine, which was part of the British Empire, which before that was part of the Ottoman Empire. The British and the Arabs used to boycott Palestine because that's where the Jews lived. The Palestine Post, which is now the Jerusalem Post, was the newspaper for the Jews. The Palestinian soccer team in the 1930s was all Jews. You can find a lot of Friedmans on that team and Schwartzes and guys.
How'd that team do, by the way?
They were pretty decent,
really?
Actually. They were pretty decent, yeah.
You try to fill a all-Jewish basketball team these days to go against the NBA All-Stars. I don't think
the Israeli Maccabi Tel Aviv is pretty solid.
Okay.
But in any event, they have a responsibility and a duty, and no other country would put up with this, and no other country would allow one rocket to be shot into their territory. Right. If say Montreal shot one rocket into Detroit, we'd bomb Mexico. So they have every right and duty to do it. And by the way, even if you don't care about Israel and you don't care about Arabs or whatever, or the Arabs of Palestine, and you don't care about or Jews or any of this stuff, do you think that if Israel goes down and we have a second Holocaust and all of the people who are marching in London get what they want, do you think they're done? Do you think they will wrap it up, or have they just begun? And I think the answer to that is quite obvious.
Yeah, they're trying to make the caliphate happen. Here's my question for the progressives and believe me, I want to hear your thoughts on this. When you see the, gays for Gaza, right? And I went to Tel Aviv.
You didn't go to Gaza. You didn't go to Gaza.
No, I didn't go there. And I can't tell you, it was actually shocking to me how gay Tel Aviv was. There were more gay flags than Israeli flags.
Not anymore. It's a lot of Israeli flags.
Okay, now it is. But this was this summer. I was like, holy shit. They have different beach. But the point is, it's a democracy. There's going to be left opinions, right opinions, all sorts of opinions. Everything's accepted. There's 2 million Israeli Arabs that live there. How many Jews or Israelis live in Gaza? 0. How many live in Morocco, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Saudi, in any of these countries?
There was
Iran,
one Jew
0.
left in Egypt. I met him in 1997. I'm pretty sure he's dead now.
Really?
But I went, and everybody was like, "You got to go see the one Jew. You want to see
see the guy.
A seriously neurotic, nervous Jew?
Yes.
Go meet the one guy in Egypt. He was.
I could just see like a Woody Allen type Egyptian. Like, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah. He's like,
my
me.
family built the fucking pyramids. And this is the thanks I get.
Yeah.
Bassem Youssef, who I've got into it before.
What a fucking tool.
He won't even go to Egypt because the president will kill him.
Yeah.
But he's like, I don't want to go to Israel because I don't think they're going to be nice to me. Your country will kill you, bro.
Complete nonsense.
Okay? The Muslim Brotherhood.
There are Muslim Arabs on the Israeli Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Miss Israel is a Muslim Arab. It's complete nonsense.
It's failed to be. But from a progressive standpoint, where do you stand on this situation? Are you calling for the ceasefire? Or do you want to see, is it the exact same thing? Are these freedom fighters? Where do you stand on this?
So the way that I see it is that I think Israel has a right to want to stop Hamas, especially with the terroristic actions that they've taken. With that being said, I wish that they learned the lessons that the United States learned when it came to battling Al-Qaeda and ISIS, right? We battled Al-Qaeda. We basically bombed a bunch of places. We didn't institute any order or structure or help people in those areas basically live a more stable life. And what happened? There was a power vacuum left, and then ISIS came. And then when we were battling ISIS, that's like defeating them. It's still ongoing, but the way that we were basically able to reduce it drastically is that we became a lot more precise. We decided to focus on specifically the leaders, toppling down that structure, not just necessarily a mass bombing campaign at least to the level that we did with Al-Qaeda.
Are you claiming that's what Israel's doing?
It seems like, and I know it's a small area, so I know it becomes more complicated, but it seems like a lot of civilian infrastructure and people have been basically killed in the process of trying to take down Hamas. So at least from what
do you know that Hamas puts their weapons in mosques and in
schools,
yes,
and nurseries and hospitals,
which is why, at least from what I've seen, a specialized task force in these areas would make more sense than just bombing it, because then you're also, one, killing civilians, and then what happens? Those civilians, especially the children, they grow up and they don't know the complexities of everything that's happening. All they know is, hey, Israel bombed my school, they bombed my hospital, and they killed my mom and dad that were there at that time, or my teacher, or whatever family member. So then they grow up to be radicalized.
If your sister was raped and your mom was beheaded, and they also had your other sister in a tunnel, and that was a half mile from your house, how tolerant would you be to the people that did that?
I wouldn't want to kill innocent people in an effort to get revenge. I would not, even if I went through all these horrible things, I would never be okay.
They drop leaflets before they bomb.
Yeah, I'm not okay with being hey, you know what? You fucked up my family, so in order to get revenge, I'm okay if you kill this random innocent family. I will no. That just purports a cycle of violence. I don't want more people to be harmed. Yeah, what is it? Around 50% of the population of Palestine/Gaza are children. They don't really have a say in what's going on. You're a child. So I think there are levels of nuance in this that we haven't really completely explored, because rightfully so, or understandably so, I should say, we're blinded by this hatred of revenge, and we have to be careful with that. That's what I want to say.
Let me give you one point to consider, and I'll stand by this.
I'm getting too old for this shit.
Hamas, terrorist organization, Israel, right to defend itself, right to exist. That's number one. Number two, feel horrible for the babies and the children in Gaza, in Palestine. Feel horrible. They do nothing to deserve this. But their parents voted for Hamas, or basically approved for Hamas. So they're Hamas is basically the one terrorizing them. The third thing,
You know that about
extremists of
30,000.
what's
Sorry,
that?
just real quick. You know about 30,000 civilians entered Israel that day. So Hamas sent in a couple thousand soldiers. So these are. It's also when people think it's a terrorist act, it was an army. They had an army of about 100,000 soldiers. They sent in several thousand soldiers, but then about 30,000 regular Gazans, moms, dads, shop owners, they went in to loot and burn everything down and everything else. So in many ways there are no innocent people there. You saw the. You
don't think children
no,
are
no, no,
innocent?
No.
You said
The
there's no-
child that happens to live there, but the death of that child is blamed on Hamas, who uses those children as civilian shields. If Hamas wanted to fight like men, fight like men.
Yeah,
but
no.
they surround themselves in kindergartens and in mosques and things of that nature. But by the way, the Israelis don't have to care about them. There's only one country in the world that is asked to care about the people that are trying to kill them, and that's Israel.
I'm sorry,
That's
but I
not
think
only
every
one
single
country.
person should care about children overall. I don't think I'm going to stop
No,
caring
I know.
about a
So
child
again,
just
if
because they live in a
if
different
your
country.
sister got
I'm still
beheaded
gonna
and your
care.
mom got raped, we'd see what
Yeah,
your response
you know,
would
if that
be.
happens, I still wouldn't want the death of an innocent child. I still wouldn't want
Nobody
that.
wants the death of an innocent
Well, you're saying that
child.
there's no responsibility or they shouldn't care about those children. So yeah, you're
I don't
okay
think-
with the death of them because you shouldn't care about them,
How-
and that's bad.
How do you define proportionate force, right? Like how do you actually address, there's really, truth is the first casualty of war. That's a saying that I heard very early on, and I think from both sides they can both feel fully justified in what it is that they're doing, but what is the true proportionate force? Like, that's all I could, really contribute to.
You
this
know, we
part of
killed
the
a lot of Nazis in World War II, and then that stopped Nazism.
Yeah, we didn't
Yeah,
go.
Nazis, not kids and civilians and
Well,
moms.
we
that's
didn't?
actually
We
not
didn't? Have
true.
you heard
Did
of
you remember the
Dresden?
bombing of Dresden? We killed
Yeah, I'm not
hundreds of
I'm not
thousands of
defending
civilians.
that
The British
either.
did.
I'm
Yeah.
not defending
Yeah.
that either, though. Don't you agree that the bombing of Dresden was bad?
Let me get your guys' thoughts on a
It
couple
helped
of
end
things.
World
What
War
should they
II.
do with all the kids that have been dying in Yemen?
What do you mean? We should try to help, give aid and help children
What
when they're
about
suffering.
all the kids in Syria?
Yeah, absolutely. When
What
it
about
comes
Sudan?
to yeah, I care about
Yeah, of
children.
course.
But why doesn't
globally.
anybody talk about that since you care about the kids
Because
so much?
right now the United States is arming and funding Israel, and I think that's why people have a better. We have influence over that as American citizens.
You
I don't have
think
any
that we were
influence.
arming anybody in
No, we
Syria
were, but that's not
or
good. I don't
Yemen?
defend that either. Yeah.
Okay. But why don't you see people advocating and campaigning and rioting, gays for Yemen?
I think
Or gays for
30,000.
Syria.
I think
Why don't you see
30,000
that?
people dead will make people.
What's that?
30,000 people dead.
What about
where are you getting-
300,000 people dead or 2 million people dead?
I think if you're-
Because that's the amount of people that have died,
died
in Yemen,
of
or in
starvation
Syria.
and famine, right? Yeah.
What's that?
So a lot of them are starvation and famine. Others.
I guess
have
the
to do
point
with
that I'm
violence
making
and
here
whatnot.
is everyone wants to single out what's happening in Israel and Gaza. 30,000 in the greater context of things pales into comparison what's happened with literally million people in Yemen or in Syria. Horrible atrocities. Sudan, half countries in Africa, you hear nothing. You don't hear a peep. Zero. You don't even know about the numbers. But when Israel wants to defend themselves after literally being attacked, all of a sudden they're the bad guys. They're the genocider guys. Pretty horrible at genocide because the population has basically increased
5x.
5x in the last few years. Here's another question. The rape. The rape thing is weird to me, especially as women. Forget about the Jewish and the Arabs and the Muslims. The rape. Why don't you hear stories about Israeli IDF members raping the women? Why do you only hear the rape on the...
There's
Really?
lots of documented instances of the IDF and other imprisoned Palestinian people being sexually abused in prisons and jails in Israel.
You hear that?
Yeah.
But you don't hear it currently. By the way, that's in any jail around the world, by the way. The rape. Okay, drop the soap. There's the joke. I'm saying in the act of war, I hear zero of these stories come out
Well, all
about
this,
them raping the women. But I hear tons of stories. So where I hear believe all women, where are you united on the rape stuff? You not feel bad for the rape
Of course
victims?
they do.
Of course,
Yeah, of course
rape
they
is
do.
horrible.
Okay.
I think
Except for when it happens to Israeli women, though.
No, it's horrible for anybody
Interesting.
who's a victim of it. I think this goes back to your earlier question. Oh, why are people talking about this versus that? Well, yeah, a lot of it just comes down to what's in the news. People will talk about what they see in the news more often. It's not necessarily a matter of oh, I actually have less moral care or whatever. It's just the fact of the matter is when you see something talked about a lot, you end up talking about it.
Well, here's
Yeah.
my point. You talk about what's in the news. Why is it in the news so much? There's been a civil war in Yemen. Google how many people have died in Syria or Yemen. It's Arabs killing each other, Arabs and Muslims, babies dying, starvation. It's the worst thing in the world. Dave can tell you all about this. It's not even in the news. You don't even know about it. But God forbid, Israel wants to defend their country from a terrorist organization calling for their death. It's all over the news. But that's my point, is it's an inconvenient truth that all these deaths, all these murders, Arabs killing other Arabs, Muslims killing other Arabs, you don't even know about it. But God forbid Israel defends itself. It's all over the news. That's my point, Pixie.
Do you think that it's possible that Israel could have killed less than 30,000 people?
Well, first off, you're taking Hamas's numbers, so you're taking a terrorist organization.
You're talking about the Gaza Health Ministry? Yeah, it's Hamas run, but the Gaza Health Ministry is cited internally by the U.S.
If you're about to say UN, I'm going to tell you right now,
by the US
they have zero credibility in the UN.
The U.S. State Department internally cites the Gaza Health Ministry because their numbers have repeatedly been consistent with what other independent human rights orgs report, as well as the UN, sure.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you a question, since you're defending them so much. If you had the opportunity...
I'm not defending Hamas.
Clearly, you're... If you could take a nice little vacation to Gaza or Israel, where would you go? You don't even have to wear a headscarf.
I don't want to really go to either of those places,
really?
to be honest. Yeah.
Tell me why. Tell me why they're the same.
Gaza right now is being bombarded with bombs
Prior to the bombing, how about
onslaught.
that? Prior to October 7th, where would you have rather gone?
I wouldn't have been allowed in because of the economic blockade that Israel and Egypt enforce.
You wouldn't be allowed in where?
Into Gaza because
Let's say they said they would have made an exception for you.
Because of the blockade enforced by Israel and Egypt, yeah.
And why wouldn't you go to Israel?
I have no interest in going to Israel.
Okay. So it's the same thing.
I never said it was the same. You asked me where I'd rather go, and I say I don't have any interest in going to Gaza or Israel.
Dave, I mean, where do you want to go with this?
Yeah, she's whatever. But hopefully you'll be the future of a progressive movement. Because that would be, there's something, you got some of the pieces. You'll be all right.
Laura, do you want to weigh in on this as someone that is not Jewish or Muslim and has no bone to pick with anyone here? Where would you stand on something like this?
I don't. No, I do think they have the right to defend themselves. And what I keep hearing you say, it's not a tangent, but I'm definitely one that's like equal outrage, right? Why are you saying this about this, but you don't say it about the other thing? You talk so much about children and about poor children, and I would do anything for the children. I just don't know how you would feel about the unborn. So you probably, as a progressive, you would feel, abortion cool.
Oh, this is a whole philosophical discussion.
It is.
Let's stay on this topic. Let's not get to abortion.
I'm not going there. But what my point is the equal outrage. That's what I was going with. Is that to me, I keep hearing that word children and the poor children and the innocent children, and all I keep thinking in my head is, you probably don't care how many millions have been killed here in this country. Or let's just go right here and talk about the children here that are getting killed by all the illegal immigrants that are coming in here and killing them. So again, about Israel, I absolutely think they need to defend themselves. There's still hostages there. They need to get them out. So that's how I feel about that. But again, I don't have like one side or the other, like what we're talking here, and I'm not going to fight about it. Mm-hmm. But I just want equal outrage. Like, be upset about all the things or shut up about all the things.
Well, here's what I'll say. Final word, and then we'll wrap up. There's the famous quote, "Show me your friends, I'll show you your future." Mm-hmm. Or "Show me your friends, I'll show you who you are." Just look at who's friends with each other. Mm-hmm. Let's start with Hamas. They got Hezbollah, respect. They got the Houthi rebels in Yemen. You're holding down the fort. They got ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram rooting for them. And their granddaddy, their papi, their benefactor is Iran. Good luck, guys. Those are your friends.
Hey, don't forget Ilhan and AOC.
Don't forget those people. That's going on there. But then you have, on Israel's side, the country you live in, United States of America, kind of on that team. And then you have every liberal democracy around the world, anyone who stands for just basic Western values, Australia, Canada, the EU, South Korea, you name it, all of a sudden they're on Team Israel. Interesting. So if you guys are comfortable rooting for Hamas land on behalf of Iran, all good. It's all good. I'm just letting you know that the majority of Americans are not buying this shit. But you know who is? Gen Z. Mm-hmm. I don't know about Gen Z, but who's influencing Gen Z more than anybody? Shout out to TikTok. We'll see what's going on there. Anyway.
The majority of Americans support a ceasefire. Overwhelmingly. 75% of Americans support a ceasefire, 90% of Democrats support a ceasefire, 51% of Republicans
who also supports
a
a ceasefire? Israel if they can get their hostages back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want
They're
the
like,
hostages
dude, we'll
released
stop bombing
too.
you today. Just give us back our 150 hostages. What should they do with those hostages, by the way?
Hamas should release all the hostages. They shouldn't be having
And
any
if they
hostages.
don't,
And if they don't?
what should Israel do?
Just sit there and wait, hope and pray.
You know what they
The-
should do? I'm going to answer it.
If you care
They're
about
gonna
the
write an email.
hostages-
Dear Hamas, please return our hostages.
Adam,
if
do you
not,
know-
I'm going to send a mean tweet out to you.
Adam, do you know when the most amount of hostages were released during all of this chaos?
When
It
there was
dur-
a ceasefire.
It was during a ceasefire.
Correct.
Yeah, that's why I support a ceasefire. I want the hostages released, and I want the onslaught to
I don't
stop.
think there's anybody that doesn't want to see a ceasefire and the bombings anymore. Return the rest of the hostages.
I agree.
That's what's happening right now.
I agree. Yeah.
Anyway, final word to Dave Rubin on this topic.
Yeah, you're so confused about everything. It's
Yeah.
so bizarre, and it's weird. It's weird. I forget what that's like. I've enjoyed this. This
Yes.
was fun.
Thank you, Dave
You're a
Rubin.
fine host.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. If you like that one, click right here to watch the full SOSCAST. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.